Humera, you want to start?
Hi, Matt.
You're in a different seat today. I didn't know people were allowed to change seats.
I think we can have some mobility
You're not allowed.
here.
You can only sit there. I'd be confused.
And Matt is not
Humera,
here, so I just
I
wanted
noticed,
to.
yeah.
I just wanted to ask a little bit about UNRWA, given that the supplemental passed in the Senate, although we know it has a long way in the House and all that. But there is a provision has been added recently, basically barring the United States from resuming its funding for UNRWA. I just want to sort of a little bit do fact checking. Does that mean that the question of whether or not the United States will resume its funding to UNRWA when and if the investigation is concluded is in a way irrelevant? And this provision makes it almost impossible for the administration to resume its funding for the agency.
So I think it's hard to answer the question because the high degree of uncertainty that you kind of got at the intro to your question, which is this is a law that has passed one chamber of Congress. We don't know what will happen in the House, but as you heard the president just say, we very much urge that that the House take up the legislation and pass it. That being said, we don't know what the final provision will be, but of course we will comply with the law, whatever it ultimately looks like.
But the way the provision has been added, it looks like there was quite a lot of bipartisan support from Congress. So do you think that that would mean even if this supplemental fails, there is going to be another legislation and this provision will likely be put in there? How concerned are you basically that the administration by law will be barred from resuming its funding for UNRWA, and what alternatives are you looking at?
So I just don't want to get into trying to speculate about what Congress might do. As you know, that is always somewhat of an unpredictable situation, and I think it's an incredibly predictable situation right now if you just look at the back and forth over this very piece of legislation between the House and the Senate over the past few weeks. I will say, as a general principle, we support the work that UNRWA does. We support delivering humanitarian assistance to the Palestinian people in Gaza. The United States has been the largest funder of humanitarian assistance to Palestinians, and we expect to continue funding humanitarian assistance to Palestinians. We, of course, have suspended our funding to UNRWA while the investigation is ongoing. We don't know what Congress ultimately will do, but we will explore any and all available alternatives to ensure that humanitarian assistance can continue to flow from the United States to innocent civilians who need it.
And are you already looking at options, those options like rerouting this money to alternative like humanitarian organizations on the ground, and are you encouraging other countries to resume their funding or even like increase their funding?
I don't want to get too much into internal deliberations, and I certainly don't want to get into the conversations that we're having with other countries. As you know, we have suspended our funding. I know other countries have done the same. I know we've done that in good faith because we think it's important to see the results of the investigation, and it's a legitimate thing for other countries to want to wait and see the results of the investigation and how UNRWA responds to that investigation as well. But of course, we are always looking at all available alternatives. We see the legislation that has passed in one branch of Congress. It is certainly possible that could pass through another branch and ultimately be the law. So of course we look at all available alternatives because, as I said, it is our priority to ensure that innocent civilians in Gaza can continue to get humanitarian assistance from the United States and from other countries who want to provide it to them.
Okay, final thing is like the end of February is a critical date for UNRWA. So do you have like anything concrete planning towards that date? It's not too distant in the future.
As I said, we are engaging in conversations with the United Nations and with our international partners about the importance of ensuring that humanitarian assistance is not interrupted. We'll continue to do that. There's nothing I can provide you in terms of specifics today, but those are conversations that are ongoing. And I would also say this does highlight why it's important that the United Nations investigation proceed as quickly as possible because of this very real challenge. Yeah, go ahead.
Suppose that the investigation comes satisfactory and so on. Will the U.S. make a commitment that it will continue to...
So, Saeed, whenever you start a question with suppose, it's like starting a question with if. You get to a hypothetical. I don't want to engage with a hypothetical. We will wait and see what let me just finish my answer. We will wait and see what the results of the investigation show. And importantly, how the United Nations and how UNRWA respond to the results of that investigation. That is as important, but both the backward-looking aspect of it, the backward-looking aspect of it is important, so is the forward-looking aspect in terms of how they respond, how they impose accountability for any employees who are shown to have engaged in wrongdoing, and how they put in place any measures to ensure this can't be repeated in the future.
Okay. Now, we know that UNRWA is not only in Gaza. It is in the West Bank. It is in Jordan. It is in Lebanon. It is in Syria. I mean, it takes care of millions of Palestinians. I mean, do you see an alternative to UNRWA after, so many decades of being there, knowing exactly what to do, making sure that Palestinians in these awful refugee places are able to eat and go to school, get medical care?
So, Saeed, we support the work that UNRWA does.
Right.
So I want to make sure that is very clear.
Yeah,
We support.
you are the largest donor.
I know we support that. That is exactly right, and that is why we think it's so important that they conduct this investigation. And that is all. I mean, this is just kind of we're speaking with this in relation to UNRWA, but this is always true when you see credible allegations of wrongdoing at any organization, whether it be a government entity, whether it be a nonprofit, whether it be a private corporation. It's important that that organization take action to ensure that people are held accountable, that they implement reforms if necessary, and that is all the more true at an organization that depends on funding from donors, as UNRWA does.
Okay, but I don't want to belabor the issue.
Please do.
Obviously, that you. Yeah, okay, I will belabor the issue.
Don't say things that aren't true, Saeed.
Okay, exactly. But this is the thing. I mean, we are all expecting this investigation to conclude, and this investigation either can conclude positively or negatively. They say, okay, this is it. We are going to take one measure, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 measures. So, at least hypothetically, if you allow me, if and when, I mean, one would expect that the results would be satisfactory to all the donors. If they are, then one should expect that UNRWA would continue to function.
When this investigation concludes, we will have a response to it, but I don't want, for obvious reasons, to offer what that response might be while the investigation is very much underway. But as I said, we support the work that UNRWA does, not just in Gaza, but everywhere else where it operates it, because it provides humanitarian assistance that is critical.
This is what I mean. Even if you get a satisfactory result from the investigation, but the Congress is barring you from
Exactly.
sort of going ahead with, they're prohibiting you to fund UNRWA. Then what are you going to do? What's your solution?
As I said, we will explore all available alternatives to deliver humanitarian assistance to the Palestinian people. We will follow the law, however. We don't have any choice to do that, and of course, that's what we'll do.
Could there be an executive waiver in this case? I'm sorry. Yeah.
You are now asking me to speculate about a law that has not yet been
because
passed.
this has been done before many times.
I do not know what provision, if any, will ultimately pass Congress.
I have
There's just no way to
questions
answer that
that
question.